It was inspection day on the naval base, the day when every uniform had to be spotless and every breath measured. The SEAL Admiral walked the line with his usual mix of pride and sarcasm, scanning each recruit for imperfections. But at the far end stood someone who wasn't supposed to matter, a quiet maintenance worker with worn boots and calloused hands, just cleaning after the recruits, until the Admiral decided to make him the target of his mockery. No one expected what happened next. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of unexpected heroes and moments when true character is revealed, subscribe for more. This story might just change how you see the quiet people around you. The first light of dawn broke over Naval Base Coronado, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The massive hangars stood like sleeping giants, their metal surfaces catching the early morning light. Inside, Hangar 7, a solitary figure moved methodically across the concrete floor, pushing a mop in perfect measured strokes. Thaddeus "Tad" Merrick arrived before anyone else, as he had every day for the past 3 years. At 40, his weathered face told the story of a man who had seen more than most. The harsh fluorescent lights highlighted the lines around his eyes and the premature gray at his temples. His hands, calloused and strong, gripped the worn wooden handle of his mop as he worked in absolute silence. There was something unusual in the way he moved, a precision that seemed at odds with the mundane task of cleaning a floor. Each stroke covered exactly the same distance. He turned at perfect right angles, following an invisible grid pattern that only he could see. It was the kind of efficiency that came from years of discipline, not from pushing a mop. Today was inspection day at Naval Base Coronado, the kind of day that sent young recruits into panic and veterans into a resigned state of preparedness. For Tad, it was just another day of invisibility. He paused near the east wall, gazing out the small rectangular window. The sun had fully risen now, casting long shadows across the parade ground where, in a few hours, Admiral Bridger Harlow would begin his notorious inspection. Tad checked his watch, a simple digital timepiece with a worn band, then returned to his methodical cleaning. The heavy metal side door swung open with a bang. Lieutenant Rowan Collins strode in, his uniform crisp and his manner harried. At 28, Collins was young for his rank, a rising star who had earned his position through intelligence and hard work rather than connections. His eyes swept the hangar, mentally checking off his pre-inspection tasks, before landing on Tad. "Morning, Merrick," Collins said with a nod. It was more acknowledgement than Tad usually received. "Lieutenant," Tad replied quietly, not looking up from his work. Collins paused, watching the maintenance man for a moment. "You were military once," he said. That wasn't a question. Tad's rhythm with the mop never faltered. "A long time ago." "What branch? Does it matter?" Collins seemed about to press further when the door banged open again and a flood of enlisted personnel poured in, their voices echoing in the cavernous space. The moment of curiosity passed, and Tad faded back into invisibility as Collins turned his attention to the new arrivals. "Listen up," Collins called, his voice carrying over the noise. "Admiral Harlow will be here at 800 sharp. I need this place inspection ready in 45 minutes. Chief Alvarez, get your team on the aircraft components. Ramirez, your squad handles equipment check. Wang, personnel files ready for review." He continued assigning tasks, his clipboard a flurry of activity as he checked items off his list. Tad moved around them all, a ghost in their midst, adjusting his cleaning pattern to accommodate the sudden influx of activity. No one noticed how he anticipated their movements, shifting slightly before someone stepped into his path, moving his bucket moments before someone would have tripped over it. A young recruit, no more than 19, hurried past with a stack of binders. He collided with Tad's shoulder hard enough to send the maintenance man back a step, but not hard enough to make the recruit drop his load. "Watch it," the recruit muttered without looking back. Tad said nothing, resuming his work as if the collision had never occurred. But his eyes followed the recruit, noting the name on his uniform, Wilkins. At the far end of the hangar, several older officers entered, their conversation hushed but intense. Commander Elias Fenway led the group, his silver hair and weathered face marking him as a career military man. At 54, Fenway had seen it all, or so he thought. His eyes scanned the hangar with professional detachment until they landed on Tad. For a brief moment, something like recognition flickered across his features before he quickly masked it and turned his attention back to his colleagues. The hangar transformed around Tad as personnel streamed in, each focused on their own preparations. The noise level rose steadily, a symphony of military efficiency punctuated by occasional barked orders and the clatter of equipment being moved and organized. Through it all, Tad continued his silent, methodical work, invisible to almost everyone. Another recruit, rushing past with a polishing cloth, knocked over Tad's bucket, sending dirty water across a section of floor he had just cleaned. "Sorry," the young man called over his shoulder, clearly not sorry at all. Tad paused, looking down at the spill, then at his watch. Without a change in expression, he retrieved the bucket, refilled it, and began cleaning the section again, his movements never betraying frustration or anger. Across the hangar, Lieutenant Collins noticed the incident. He frowned, starting to move toward the recruit who had caused the spill, but another officer called him away, with an urgent question. The moment of potential intervention passed. Tad finished recleaning the section and moved on to the next, his rhythm unbroken despite the interruption. As he worked, his sleeve rose slightly, revealing a glimpse of something dark on his forearm before he quickly adjusted it, buttoning the cuff more securely. The clock on the wall read 0745. 15 minutes until Admiral Harlow's arrival. Tad moved to the far corner of the hangar, where a young ensign named Porter struggled with his uniform. The young man's hands shook as he tried to adjust his service ribbons, which were slightly askew. No one else seemed to notice his distress. Tad approached, mop still in hand. "Your ribbons," he said quietly. Porter looked up, startled. "What?" "They're out of alignment, may cause trouble during inspection." Porter glanced down at his chest, then back at Tad, uncertainty clear in his expression. "I can never get them right." Tad set his mop aside, his movements deliberate. Permission to adjust? The formality of the request, coming from a maintenance worker, seemed to confuse Porter, but he nodded. Tad's hands moved with surprising dexterity, adjusting the ribbons with precision, his fingers never lingering longer than necessary. "There," he said, stepping back and retrieving his mop. "Regulation perfect." Porter examined the adjustment, relief washing over his features. "Thanks, Merrick," Tad supplied, already turning away. "Thanks, Merrick. I owe you one." Tad didn't acknowledge the gratitude, simply resuming his cleaning pattern as if the interaction had never occurred, but his eyes continued to scan the room, noting details that others missed. The positioning of personnel, the quality of uniform preparations, the subtle signs of nervous anticipation that permeated the space. At 0750, Commander Fenway approached Lieutenant Collins, their conversation just within Tad's hearing range as he worked nearby. "Everything in order, Lieutenant?" Fenway asked, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Yes, sir," Collins replied confidently. "All personnel accounted for, equipment ready for inspection, maintenance logs updated and verified." "Good. Admiral Harlow is in rare form today. 3 reprimands already this morning, and he hasn't even started the formal inspection yet." Collins' confident expression faltered slightly. "Understood, sir. We're prepared." Fenway nodded, then hesitated, his eyes drifting toward Tad. "That maintenance worker, how long has he been here?" Collins glanced over. "Merrick, about 3 years, I think. Keeps to himself. Does good work. Why?" Fenway shook his head. "Nothing. Just curious. He looks familiar somehow." "Former military," he said. Didn't specify which branch. "Interesting," Fenway murmured, then straightened as another officer approached with a question. The conversation moved on, but Fenway's eyes returned to Tad more than once, a puzzled expression on his face. As the minutes ticked, down to Admiral Harlow's arrival, the tension in the hangar rose palpably. Junior officers made last-minute adjustments to their uniforms. Enlisted personnel stood straighter, eyes forward, anticipating the moment when they would be under scrutiny. Tad continued working, seemingly oblivious to the mounting tension. But as the temperature in the hangar rose with the increasing number of bodies, he paused to roll up his sleeves. His hands moved to the first button of his cuff, then stopped. After a moment's hesitation, he rebuttoned it securely instead, despite the sweat now visible on his brow. The gesture did not go unnoticed by Commander Fenway, who watched with narrowed eyes from across the room. At 0755, Tad moved to a less conspicuous position near the back wall of the hangar, his cleaning nearly complete. As he adjusted his worn wallet in his pocket, a weathered photograph slipped out, landing face up on the floor. He quickly retrieved it, but not before the image was briefly visible. A group of men in desert camouflage, their faces blacked out with marker, standing in front of a helicopter in a remote, dusty location. The photograph disappeared back into his pocket as the massive hangar doors began to slide open with a mechanical groan. Bright morning sunlight spilled across the concrete floor, creating a dramatic silhouette of the man who stood framed in the doorway. Admiral Bridger Harlow was a legend within the Navy SEAL community, a man whose reputation preceded him like a shockwave. At 58, he maintained the physical fitness of men half his age, his posture ramrod straight, his uniform immaculate. His face, tanned and lined from years of service in the world's most hostile environments, revealed little emotion beyond a perpetual expression of critical assessment. As Harlow entered the hangar, flanked by his aides, the space fell into immediate silence. Even the ambient sounds of equipment seemed to quiet in his presence. His eyes, sharp and evaluating, swept across the assembled personnel, missing nothing. "Attention on deck!" someone called, though the command was hardly necessary. Everyone was already at rigid attention, everyone except Tad, who continued his methodical mopping, head down, moving slowly backward toward the shadows along the wall. Harlow began his inspection with practiced efficiency, moving down the line of personnel, examining uniforms, asking pointed questions about duties and responsibilities, occasionally making notes on his clipboard. His inspection style was legendary for its thoroughness and unpredictability. Sometimes he would pass by 10 sailors without comment, only to spend 5 minutes dissecting the minutest flaw in the 11th's appearance. "Your boots, Petty Officer Thompson," Harlow said, his voice carrying clearly across the hangar. "Did you polish them with mud?" "No, sir," the young sailor responded, sweat beading on his forehead. "Then perhaps you'd care to explain why I can't see my reflection in them?" "No excuse, sir." "Indeed," Harlow replied, making a note before moving on. The inspection continued in this vein, with Harlow finding flaws both real and imagined, his commentary becoming increasingly caustic as he progressed. The tension in the hangar was thick enough to cut with a knife. Tad remained in the background, still working, still invisible to most. But twice Harlow's eyes flicked in his direction between inspections, a curious intensity building in his gaze. As Tad worked near a supply cabinet, Lieutenant Collins approached, reaching for a binder on a high shelf. In his haste, he knocked over a metal supply bin, sending its contents clattering toward the floor. Without looking up, Tad's hand shot out with lightning-fast reflexes, catching a falling toolbox before it hit the ground. The movement was instinctive, fluid, and far too quick for an ordinary maintenance worker. Collins stared at Tad's hand on the toolbox, then at his face. "Good catch," he said quietly. Tad immediately returned to his deliberately slow, methodical cleaning. "Just lucky," he murmured. But the incident had not gone unnoticed by Admiral Harlow, whose eyes narrowed thoughtfully before he turned back to his inspection, his next critique even harsher than before. Commander Fenway, who had been observing from the periphery, pulled out his secure phone and discreetly typed a message. When it buzzed with an immediate response, he stared at the screen for a long moment, his expression growing increasingly troubled. He glanced from the phone to Tad, then back again, before slowly making his way toward Admiral Harlow. The Admiral's inspection had grown increasingly severe, his mood darkening as he moved down the line. Officers exchanged worried glances, sensing the building storm. "Something's off with the Admiral today," one whispered to another. "He's looking for someone to tear apart," came the response. Fenway reached Harlow's side, leaning in to whisper urgently, "Sir, about the maintenance worker." "Not now, Commander," Harlow cut him off sharply, dismissing him with a gesture. Fenway retreated, looking troubled, but continued to watch Tad from across the room. His hand hovered near his secure phone, as if debating whether to make another call. As Harlow finished with the last recruit, his criticism reaching new heights of intensity, he suddenly changed direction. Instead of continuing to the equipment section as expected, he turned and walked purposefully toward Tad, who kept mopping, head down. The entire hangar seemed to hold its breath as Harlow approached the maintenance man. Even those who had paid no attention to Tad before now watched with curious apprehension, sensing something significant in the Admiral's focused attention. "You!" Harlow called out, his voice echoing across the now silent space. "Maintenance." Tad stopped but didn't look up. "Sir?" he responded quietly, still gripping his mop. You look awfully squared away for a janitor, Harlow announced loudly, circling Tad like a predator assessing its prey. Standing there with perfect posture while real sailors get dressed down. Uncomfortable silence spread through the hangar as the Admiral's focus intensified. What's your name? Harlow demanded. Merrick, sir, Tad responded, eyes still down. Look at me when I address you, Merrick. Tad raised his eyes slowly, revealing nothing in his steady gaze. Admiral Harlow studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then his eyes dropped to Tad's carefully buttoned sleeves. Those sleeves, Harlow continued, pointing to Tad's cuffs. What are you hiding under there? Got any ink worth looking at, or just the cartoon stuff? A few nervous chuckles rippled through the gathered personnel, quickly silenced by the tension of the moment. When Tad didn't respond, Harlow's expression hardened. In a swift motion, he knocked the mop from Tad's hands, sending it clattering across the floor. The sound echoed in the silent hangar, magnified by the collective held breath of everyone watching. For a split second, Tad's stance shifted, feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced, hands relaxed but ready. A perfect military posture, the kind that comes from years of training, not from pushing a mop. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the stance relaxed back into the slouched posture of a maintenance worker. But Admiral Harlow had seen it. His eyes narrowed at the reaction, a new intensity focusing his gaze. Show us your tattoo, maintenance man, he commanded, louder now, his voice carrying to every corner of the hangar. Let's see if you've got something worth the uniform you're pretending to wear. The challenge hung in the air, a public humiliation designed to provoke a response. Every eye in the hangar was now fixed on the confrontation, the regular inspection forgotten in the face of this unexpected drama. Tad stood motionless, seemingly calculating his options. Across the room, Commander Fenway looked increasingly anxious, his hand now resting on his secure phone, thumb poised over the screen. The silence stretched, becoming uncomfortable, then almost unbearable. Finally, Tad set his mop aside and began slowly rolling up his sleeve. The fabric of his worn work shirt resisted, the cuff tight around his muscular forearm. As he methodically unbuttoned and folded back the material, a hushed anticipation fell over the room. The sleeve rolled higher, revealing the beginning of a faded tattoo, the outline of what appeared to be an eagle's wing, etched in faded black ink against sun-weathered skin. But there was more beneath it, still hidden as Tad paused in his revelation. Admiral Harlow's expression began to change from mockery to confusion as he stared at the partially revealed tattoo. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, followed immediately by something that looked almost like alarm. "Stop!" he ordered abruptly, his voice sharp with sudden urgency. But Tad continued the slow reveal, his eyes now locked with the Admiral's in silent challenge. The sleeve rolled higher, exposing more of the tattoo with each deliberate fold of fabric. The hangar had gone completely still, the collective breath of everyone present held in suspense as they waited to see what hidden mark could possibly cause such a reaction in a man as formidable as Admiral Bridger Harlow. If you found yourself holding your breath through this part, imagine what happens next. What hidden past does Tad carry beneath that faded ink? Share your thoughts below and subscribe if you want to see the next part of this story. Some heroes walk among us every day, invisible until the moment truth comes to light. The sleeve continued its upward journey, revealing more of the tattoo with each deliberate fold. The eagle's wings took full shape, stretched wide above what was now clearly visible as a gold trident crossed with a dagger. The SEAL trident, unmistakable even in its faded state, etched permanently into the skin of a man who by all appearances was nothing more than base maintenance staff. Admiral Harlow's face had gone completely rigid, a mask of control barely containing whatever storm raged behind his eyes. His attention was now fully locked on the tattoo, specifically on what lay partially obscured beneath it, a marking that no ordinary SEAL would carry. The rest of the hangar had receded into a blur of white noise. For Harlow and Tad, there existed only this moment, this revelation unfolding in painful slow motion. Tad's sleeve reached its final fold, exposing the complete tattoo. Beneath the trident, partially obscured by a jagged scar but still legible, were the characters ST9 Phantom. Admiral Harlow's clipboard slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor with a sound that echoed through the silent hangar. No one moved to retrieve it. "Where did you get that?" Harlow asked, his voice barely audible, all pretense of public performance abandoned. Tad met his gaze directly, his eyes clear and unblinking. When he spoke, his voice carried just far enough for those nearest to hear. "From you, sir. You pinned it yourself. Kandahar, 2008. The words hung in the air between them, a bridge across 17 years and thousands of miles, connecting two men who by all official records should never have shared a history. A wave of whispers rippled outward from the scene, personnel exchanging confused glances and hurried theories. Commander Fenway took 2 steps forward, then stopped, his face a mask of controlled alarm. For those observing, the change in Admiral Harlow was profound and unsettling. The man who had entered the hangar radiating authority now stood almost imperceptibly off balance, as if the earth beneath his feet had shifted without warning. "That operation is still classified," Harlow said, his voice low but intense. "So am I," Tad replied simply. Lieutenant Collins watched the exchange with mounting confusion, his eyes darting between the admiral and the maintenance worker he had barely noticed for 3 years. Other officers began moving closer, drawn by the palpable tension, curious about what could possibly reduce Admiral Harlow to this state of barely concealed shock. "This conversation needs to move elsewhere," Harlow said, regaining some of his composure. He glanced around at the assembled personnel, suddenly aware of the audience. "Now." Tad rolled his sleeve back down, rebuttoning it with the same methodical precision he applied to every task. "I have floors to finish, sir." The simple statement, delivered without emotion, carried more weight than any challenge. It was a rejection of Harlow's authority, a claim to a different life, a different identity. Harlow's jaw tightened. "That wasn't a request, Chief." The rank designation sent another ripple of whispers through the hangar. "Chief, not Merrick, not maintenance, Chief." "I'm not in your chain of command anymore, sir," Tad replied, his voice remaining steady. "I haven't been since Kabul." The mention of Kabul visibly impacted Harlow, like a physical blow he refused to acknowledge. His eyes narrowed, reassessing the man before him, seeing beyond the maintenance uniform to something darker, more complex. 16 men went into those mountains, Harlow said carefully. Pentagon records state that 16 men died there. Pentagon records say a lot of things, sir, not all of them true. Commander Fenway had maneuvered closer during this exchange, his expression grave. He cleared his throat softly. "Admiral, SecNav is expecting our readiness report by 0930. Perhaps we should continue the inspection." Harlow didn't acknowledge him, his focus still entirely on Tad. "You just disappeared. No contact, no explanation." "Orders, sir. Same as the ones you gave, then denied giving." The accusation hung between them, sharp as a blade. Lieutenant Collins, sensing the growing discomfort among the assembled personnel, stepped forward. "Sir, should I dismiss the company to their stations?" This time, Harlow registered the interruption. He blinked once, then straightened, the mask of command settling back over his features. "Yes, Lieutenant. Dismiss them. Inspection complete." Collins nodded, turning to address the hangar. "Company dismissed. Return to your assigned stations and duties." The personnel dispersed slowly, reluctant to leave the scene of such unusual drama. Small groups formed immediately. Hushed conversations, speculating about what they had just witnessed. Admiral Harlow bent to retrieve his fallen clipboard, a mundane action that nonetheless seemed to cost him considerable effort. When he straightened, his composure had returned, though something in his eyes remained disturbed. "Commander Fenway, continue with the equipment inspection. I'll join you shortly." "Yes, sir," Fenway replied, though he hesitated before moving away, his gaze lingering on Tad with undisguised curiosity. When most of the personnel had cleared, leaving only a few stragglers pretending to be occupied with tasks nearby, Harlow turned back to Tad. "My office, 10 minutes, he said, his voice pitched low. "With respect, sir, I'm civilian staff now. My shift ends at 1600. Harlow leaned in slightly, his control slipping. "Do you have any idea what your presence here could trigger? The questions it would raise? The investigations it would reopen?" Tad's expression remained impassive. "I'm just maintaining the floors, sir. That's all I've done for 3 years." "Why here?" Harlow demanded. "Of all the places you could disappear to, why choose my base?" For the first time, something flickered in Tad's eyes, a brief glimpse of an emotion too complex to name. It wasn't my choice, sir. Assignment came through the program. The program was dismantled after Kabul. Was it? Tad's question carried weight beyond its simplicity. Before Harlow could respond, the side door to the hangar opened, admitting a junior officer who approached with obvious hesitation. Admiral Harlow, sir. Urgent call from Washington in your office. They said it couldn't wait. Harlow's expression darkened. Tell them I'll call back. Sir, it's SecDef himself on the line. That gave Harlow pause. He glanced at his watch, then back at Tad, calculation evident in his gaze. We're not finished here. I never said we were, sir, Tad replied quietly. Harlow turned to go, then stopped, looking back over his shoulder. Stay on base today, Merrick. That's not a request. With that, he strode away, gathering his authority around him like armor as he followed the junior officer out of the hangar. The heavy metal door clanged shut behind them, the sound echoing in the now nearly empty space. Tad stood motionless for several seconds, then bent to retrieve his mop. He resumed his cleaning pattern exactly where he had left off, as if the confrontation with Harlow had never occurred. But something had changed. The few personnel remaining in the hangar no longer looked through him. Their gazes followed his movements with new interest, new respect, and new wariness. Whatever Tad Merrick was, he was clearly more than maintenance staff. Lieutenant Collins approached cautiously, stopping at a respectful distance. Chief, he ventured, testing the title. Tad continued mopping. Just Merrick is fine, Lieutenant. Collins nodded, shifting his weight uncomfortably. I've been stationed here 2 years. Never knew you were former Navy. Former something, Tad corrected without looking up. That tattoo, the unit designation, I've never seen anything like it. That's the point of classified units, Lieutenant. You're not supposed to see them. Collins absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. The Admiral seemed pretty shaken. The Admiral has a lot on his mind. Is there anything I can do? Collins asked, the question sincere despite its vagueness. Tad paused in his mopping, meeting the younger man's eyes directly. Yes, you can forget what you saw here today, for your sake, not mine. The warning, delivered without heat or threat, nonetheless sent a chill through Collins. He nodded slowly, then turned and walked away, his posture reflecting new tension in his shoulders. Tad resumed his methodical cleaning, working his way across the hangar floor in the same grid pattern he had established hours earlier. But his eyes moved differently now, scanning exits, noting the positions of the few remaining personnel, assessing potential threats with the instinctive vigilance of a man accustomed to hostile environments. Commander Fenway re-entered the hangar through the side door, his movements purposeful as he crossed directly to Tad. Unlike Collins, he didn't maintain a cautious distance, instead stepping directly into Tad's path, forcing him to stop. I knew I recognized you, Fenway said without preamble. Couldn't place it at first. Your file came across my desk 3 years ago, maintenance transfer, standard background check, nothing that raised flags. The point of a good cover is that it doesn't raise flags, Tad replied evenly. Fenway's eyes narrowed. I ran operations support for 5th Group in 09, saw the after-action reports from Kandahar. Everything was redacted, but the body count, that was clear enough. 16 operators sent in, 16 flag-draped coffins sent home. Sometimes the math doesn't add up, Commander. Apparently not. Fenway studied him intently. Why maintenance? Man with your training could have written his own ticket in the private sector. Tad resumed mopping, forcing Fenway to step aside or be pushed by the advancing mop. I like the quiet. And the access? Fenway pressed, moving with him. Base maintenance gets you into every secure facility, every classified area, without raising an eyebrow. Tad stopped again, his eyes meeting Fenway's with unnerving directness. If I wanted access to classified areas, Commander, I wouldn't need a mop to get it. The statement, delivered without bravado, carried the simple weight of truth. Fenway recognized it for what it was, not a threat, but a fact. Admiral Harlow's got the Pentagon on the line right now, Fenway said, changing tack. Whatever you were part of, it's got a 3-star general sweating through his uniform. Not my concern anymore. It became your concern the moment you rolled up that sleeve, Fenway countered. You could have kept your head down, stayed invisible. Why show your hand now? For the first time, something like emotion crossed Tad's face, a fleeting shadow quickly controlled. Sometimes respect matters more than cover. Fenway nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. The Admiral pushed too hard, so you push back. Risky play. I'm not playing, Commander. Before Fenway could respond, the hangar's main doors began to open, the mechanical groan announcing a new arrival. A nondescript black SUV with government plates pulled into the hangar, stopping 20 feet from where Tad and Fenway stood. The vehicle's windows were tinted dark, revealing nothing of its occupants. The driver's door opened, and a man in a plain black suit emerged. He was tall, with close-cropped gray hair and the unmistakable bearing of federal law enforcement. He surveyed the hangar with cool efficiency before his eyes settled on Tad. "Mr. Merrick," he called, his voice carrying easily across the space. "Would you come with me, please?" It wasn't really a question. Fenway tensed visibly. "Who the hell is this?" "Above your clearance," Tad replied quietly. The suited man approached, his gait measured and confident. He stopped a precise distance from Tad and Fenway, close enough for conversation, far enough for tactical advantage. "Commander Fenway," he acknowledged with a slight nod before turning his full attention to Tad. "We need to talk, Chief." "Not a chief anymore, Vickers," Tad replied, recognition evident in his tone. "Once a chief, always a chief," Vickers countered, the ghost of a smile touching his lips before vanishing. "Vehicles waiting, time-sensitive situation." Tad's expression revealed nothing, but his posture shifted subtly, a nearly imperceptible adjustment that spoke volumes to those trained to read such signals. "I'm off the books, Vickers, have been for years. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying." Vickers glanced around the hangar, noting the few personnel still within earshot. "This isn't the venue for this conversation, Chief. Please." The addition of "please" seemed to carry special significance. Tad studied Vickers for a long moment, then set his mop aside. "My shift ends at 1600, he said, not to Vickers but to Fenway. "Floor still needs finishing." "I'll have someone cover it," Fenway replied, his tone making it clear that the state of the hangar floor was the least of his concerns. Tad nodded once, then turned to follow Vickers to the waiting SUV. As they walked, Vickers leaned in slightly. "When was the last time you had contact with Blackwood?" he asked, voice pitched for Tad's ears only. Tad's step faltered almost imperceptibly. "Blackwood is dead. Afghanistan, 2008. "That's the official record, yes." They reached the SUV, where Vickers opened the rear passenger door. Inside, the vehicle was empty save for a slim black briefcase on the far seat. "After you, Chief," Vickers said, gesturing to the interior. Tad hesitated, his eyes scanning the vehicle's interior, assessing threats and exits with practiced efficiency. "Where's this conversation heading, Vickers?" "Kandahar, then Kabul, then New York." 3 locations, 3 mission markers that trace the arc of a classified operation that had officially never existed. Tad's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes hardened. "That book is closed." "It was," Vickers agreed. "Someone's reopening it, page by bloody page." The emphasis on bloody was subtle but unmistakable. Tad's decision was immediate. He slid into the SUV's rear seat, Vickers closing the door behind him before circling to the driver's side. The vehicle pulled out of the hangar, leaving Commander Fenway standing alone with more questions than answers. Inside the SUV, Tad sat rigidly upright, his posture betraying none of the turmoil beneath. The briefcase on the seat beside him remained untouched, a black void of potential information. Vickers drove in silence for several minutes, navigating through the naval base with familiar ease. "How's your daughter?" Vickers asked finally, breaking the tension. Tad's head turned sharply. "You don't talk about her. Ever." Vickers nodded, accepting the boundary. "Fair enough. But you should know, we've had eyes on you both. Protective detail, not surveillance." "Since when?" "Since Noshak resurfaced in Bahrain last month." The name landed like a physical blow. Tad absorbed it without visible reaction, but his hands, resting on his thighs, curled slightly before relaxing again. "Noshak died in those mountains. I put 2 rounds in his chest myself." "And yet, he's very much alive," Vickers replied, reaching for the briefcase without taking his eyes off the road. He flipped it open with one hand, revealing a series of surveillance photographs. Facial recognition flagged him at a private airfield outside Manama. 97% match, confirmed by 3 separate analyses. Tad took the photographs, studying them with intense focus. The images showed a man in his 50s, lean and weathered, with a distinctive scar running from his left temple to his jaw. He wore civilian clothes but moved with military bearing, captured in the act of boarding a private jet. This was taken 6 weeks ago, Vickers continued. 2 days later, former Major General Whitson was found dead in his Alexandria home. Heart attack, according to the official report. And unofficially, toxicology found traces of a compound we've never seen before. Mimics natural cardiac arrest, metabolizes completely within hours. Very advanced, very exclusive. Tad set the photographs down, his expression unreadable. Whitson was oversight for Phantom Squad. Yes, as was Colonel Dela Cruz, who drowned in his pool 3 weeks ago. And Commander Hirsch, carbon monoxide accident in his garage last Thursday. The pattern was unmistakable. 3 senior officers connected to a classified operation. 3 deaths disguised as accidents or natural causes. Tad stared out the window as the implications settled over him. "Who else knows about this?" he asked finally. "Full picture, just me, Director Matthews, and now you. Admiral Harlow knows pieces, but he's been kept in partial darkness for his own protection. That ends today. Why now? Why expose me after all these years?" Vickers pulled the SUV into a secluded area behind the base administration building, cutting the engine. He turned to face Tad directly. "Because you're next on the list, Chief, along with anyone else who knows what really happened in Kabul." The statement hung between them, stark and unadorned. Tad's eyes revealed nothing, but the slight tension in his jaw betrayed his internal calculation. "There were 16 of us," he said finally. "Official record says all 16 died. Unofficial record says 12 died. 4 survived, but were too compromised to reintegrate." "And the truth?" Vickers pressed. Tad's gaze was steady. "The truth stays buried, Vickers, where it belongs." "Not anymore. Not with Noshak hunting down everyone connected to Phantom Squad. We need to know what he's after, and we need to know who's still alive from your team." Tad reached for the door handle. "I'm maintenance staff now, that's all." Vickers' hand shot out, gripping Tad's forearm with surprising strength. "Your daughter, Wren, 12 years old, 7th grade at Lincoln Middle School, science club on Tuesdays, soccer practice on Thursdays and Saturdays. Walks home on Mulberry Street every day at 3:15. The recitation of details, delivered in a flat, factual tone, carried its message clearly. "We know everything about your life." Tad's reaction was instant and controlled. His free hand moved with blinding speed, fingers finding Vickers' pressure points with surgical precision. The older man gasped, his grip releasing involuntarily. "That was your one mistake," Tad said, his voice deadly quiet. "Never threaten my daughter." "Not a threat," Vickers managed, massaging his wrist. "A warning. Noshak knows too. We intercepted communication. He has her schedule, her route, everything. He knows you're alive, Merrick. He knows where to find you, and he knows exactly how to hurt you." The information landed with devastating impact. Tad's carefully maintained facade cracked, revealing a glimpse of the fear beneath, quickly masked but unmistakable. "When?" he asked, all pretense abandoned. "We don't know, but he's in the country. Entered through Canada 3 days ago, using an alias we haven't cracked yet. He's moving pieces into position." Tad checked his watch, calculation evident in his expression. "School lets out in 2 hours. Vickers nodded. "We have agents in place. She's covered. But that's a band-aid, not a solution. Noshak won't stop coming. You know what he's capable of better than anyone." The reminder was unnecessary. Few people alive had witnessed Noshak's work firsthand and survived to remember it. The memories surfaced unbidden in Tad's mind. The mountain village, the systematic elimination of witnesses, the brutality that went beyond tactical necessity into the realm of psychological warfare. "I need to move her," Tad said, decision made. Secure location, new identity, complete disconnect. "Already in motion," Vickers replied. "Director Matthews has a facility prepped in Montana, off-grid, full security detail, educational resources on site. She'll be comfortable." "For how long?" The question carried the weight of a father's concern, not an operative's tactical assessment. Vickers' expression softened, marginally. "As long as necessary, but you know as well as I do, the only real solution is permanent. Noshak has to be eliminated. You have assets for that. You don't need me. We have assets, yes, but none who know him like you do. None who tracked him through the Khyber Pass for 9 days. None who got close enough to put 2 rounds in his chest. And clearly missed the heart, Tad added, a rare flash of grim humor. An oversight we intend to correct, with your help. Tad was silent for a long moment, weighing options, calculating risks and outcomes with the same methodical precision he applied to everything. I get Ren to safety first, he said finally. Then we talk parameters. My terms, not yours. Vickers nodded. Fair enough, but time is critical. Admiral Harlow has been officially briefed as of 30 minutes ago. He's expecting us both in his office to discuss reactivation protocols. I'm not being reactivated, Vickers. I'll help eliminate the threat to my daughter, but after that, I'm done. Permanently. That's between you and the Admiral, Vickers replied, restarting the SUV. My job was just to bring you in from the cold. Consider yourself defrosted, Chief. They drove in silence to the administration building, each man lost in his own thoughts. For Vickers, this was an operation, complex but defined. For Tad, it was the collapse of a carefully constructed life. The resurfacing of a past he had buried for his daughter's sake as much as his own. As they parked, Tad's phone buzzed with a text message. He checked it, his expression immediately shifting from contemplative to alert. What is it? Vickers asked, reading his reaction. Tad held up the phone, displaying a simple message. Early dismissal today. On my way home. Love you, Dad. School doesn't do early dismissals without advance notice, Tad said, already reaching for the door. Someone's making a move. Vickers was instantly on alert, pulling out his own phone. I'll check with our surveillance team. But Tad was already out of the vehicle, moving with purposeful speed toward the parking lot where his own car waited. Merrick, wait, Vickers called after him. We need to coordinate. We have protocols. Tad didn't slow down or look back. Your protocols won't save my daughter. As he reached his car, a nondescript sedan chosen for its anonymity rather than performance, Admiral Harlow emerged from the administration building, flanked by 2 security officers. He spotted Tad immediately and changed course to intercept him. Chief Merrick, he called, his voice carrying the full weight of military authority. Stand down, that's an order. Tad paused, his hand on the car door, eyes meeting Harlow's across the parking lot. In that moment, 17 years of history passed between them, a complex web of loyalty, betrayal, duty, and sacrifice. My daughter's in danger, Tad said simply. No order supersedes that. Harlow's expression shifted, something like understanding, tempering his official demeanor. He nodded once sharply. Take Vickers. Full tactical support will follow your lead. It was as close to an apology as a man like Harlow could manage, an acknowledgement of debt long unpaid. Tad hesitated, then nodded in acceptance of the offered alliance. I'll drive, Vickers said, having caught up to them. You coordinate. They moved smoothly into action, falling into the practiced rhythms of men accustomed to operating under pressure. As they pulled out of the naval base, Admiral Harlow watched them go, his expression grim. Commander Fenway approached, standing at a respectful distance. Sir, what exactly is happening here? Harlow's response was measured, each word carefully chosen. Ghosts are coming back to life, Commander, and some of them are hungry for vengeance. Miles away, in a quiet suburban neighborhood, 12-year-old Ren Merrick walked home from school, unaware of the shadow that had just fallen across her life. Behind her, a black sedan with darkened windows pulled away from the curb, keeping pace at a discreet distance. Inside, a man with a scar running from temple to jaw smiled faintly as he watched the girl through high-powered binoculars. Found you, he whispered, his accent still carrying traces of his Afghan origins despite years spent erasing them. And through you, I find your father. Have you ever wondered what lengths a person would go to protect their family? Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones living quiet lives among us, their pasts hidden beneath ordinary routines. What sacrifices would you make to keep your loved ones safe? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe to see how Tad's battle to protect his daughter unfolds in the final chapter of this story. The sedan cut through suburban streets with practiced precision, Vickers handling the vehicle with the calm efficiency of a man who had done this many times before. Beside him, Tad's outward composure betrayed nothing of the storm raging within. His eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, identifying potential threats, escape routes, defensive positions, all while his mind calculated times and distances with military precision. Surveillance team isn't responding, Vickers reported, phone to his ear. Last check-in was 20 minutes ago. Standard status report, nothing flagged. Tad's expression hardened. They're already compromised. You don't know that. Noshak doesn't leave witnesses, Vickers. You know his methods. The unspoken history hung between them. Knowledge of an enemy whose reputation for thoroughness was matched only by his capacity for creative cruelty. Vickers pressed harder on the accelerator, the sedan's engine responding with a muted roar. ETA 4 minutes, he said, taking a corner with controlled aggression. Tactical team is mobilizing from Point Loma, but they're at least 15 out. Too long, Tad replied, checking the glove compartment and finding it empty. You're unarmed? Vickers reached beneath his seat, retrieving a compact 9mm pistol and passing it to Tad without taking his eyes off the road. Standard issue, full mag, one in the chamber. Tad checked the weapon with practiced hands, movements automatic after years of muscle memory. This won't stop Noshak. It's not meant to. It's meant to slow him down until proper firepower arrives. They turned onto Mulberry Street, a quiet residential road lined with modest single-family homes. Tad's house sat midway down the block, a nondescript 2-story with faded blue siding and a small, well-maintained yard. Nothing about it suggested the occupant was anything other than an ordinary single father working a blue-collar job. That carefully constructed normalcy was shattered by the black SUV parked directly in front of the house. That's not one of ours, Vickers confirmed, slowing their approach and reaching for his radio. Control, we have unauthorized vehicle at target residence, requesting immediate backup and neighborhood containment. Tad was already moving, door open before the sedan had fully stopped, rolling onto the pavement in a controlled exit that kept his profile low and the weapon concealed against his body. Vickers followed his lead, years of shared training creating a wordless coordination as they approached the house from different angles. The front door stood partially open, a detail that sent ice through Tad's veins. He had trained Ren meticulously in home security protocols, disguising the lessons as games when she was younger, then as important responsibility as she grew older. She would never leave the door open. Tad signaled to Vickers, 2 quick hand gestures indicating his intent to enter through the front, while Vickers covered the rear. The older agent nodded, moving silently around the side of the house. Approaching the door, Tad listened for any sound from within. The house was unnaturally quiet, lacking even the ambient noises of a settled home. He pushed the door open with the barrel of his weapon, entering in a low crouch, eyes scanning for threats or signs of his daughter. The living room appeared untouched. Ren's backpack dropped casually on the couch as if she had just arrived home. A half-empty glass of water sat on the coffee table, condensation still beating on its surface. Recent, a soft scuffing sound came from the kitchen at the back of the house. Tad moved toward it with silent efficiency, weapon raised, every sense heightened to painful acuity. He rounded the corner into the kitchen and froze. Ren sat at the kitchen table, her expression a mixture of confusion and fear. Across from her sat a man Tad had last seen through the scope of a sniper rifle in the mountains of Afghanistan. Noshak looked older, the 17 intervening years having carved deeper lines around his eyes and mouth. The scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw was more pronounced against skin that had grown paler with time. But his eyes remained the same, dark and evaluating, holding the cold intelligence that had made him such a formidable adversary. "Hello, Phantom," Noshak said softly, using the call sign that had been officially erased from all records. "Your daughter has been telling me about her science project. Very impressive, very bright girl. You must be proud." Tad's grip on the weapon remained steady, but his mind raced through scenarios, each calculation ending with the same unacceptable risk to Ren. "Stand up slowly and move away from my daughter," he said, voice calm, despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Noshak smiled faintly. "I would reconsider that order. My friend outside your daughter's window might misinterpret sudden movements." He inclined his head slightly toward the backyard, where, presumably, another operative waited. As if confirming this claim, Vickers appeared in the doorway from the living room, hands raised, a thin trail of blood running from a cut on his forehead. Behind him stood a younger man holding a compact submachine gun with practiced ease. "Sorry, Chief," Vickers said grimly. "Wasn't alone out there." Noshak gestured to an empty chair at the table. "Please, join us. Family reunion, yes, after so many years. Tad remained standing, his weapon still trained on Noshak. Ren, are you hurt? She shook her head, eyes wide. Dad, who are these men? What's happening? Just some old colleagues, kiddo. Everything's going to be fine. The lie came easily, delivered with a calm confidence he was far from feeling. Noshak's smile widened. She doesn't know, does she, what her father was, what he did. He turned to Ren, his expression shifting to one of exaggerated concern. Has he told you about Kabul? About the hospital? That's enough, Tad cut in sharply. This is between us, Noshak. She has nothing to do with it. On the contrary, Noshak replied, leaning back in his chair with the relaxed posture of a man holding all the cards. She has everything to do with it. She is why you are here, living this lie of a life, pretending to be something you are not. Ren looked between them, confusion giving way to dawning comprehension. Dad? The simple word carried a weight of questions, of trust being tested. Tad felt it like a physical pressure against his chest. Lower the weapon, Phantom, Noshak said, all pretense of pleasantry gone from his voice. Or my associate will demonstrate his skills on your friend here. The younger man pressed his weapon more firmly against Vickers's head, emphasizing the threat. Tactical assessment was automatic for Tad. 2 hostiles confirmed, possibly more outside. Ren and Vickers both vulnerable. Backup still minutes away, assuming Noshak hadn't already compromised communications. Limited options, none of them good. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his weapon to the floor, then straightened, hands held slightly away from his body in the universal signal of compliance. Wise choice, Noshak said, gesturing to the empty chair once more. Now sit. We have much to discuss, you and I. Tad took the seat, positioning himself between Noshak and Ren, a subtle protective placement that did not go unnoticed by his adversary. Still the guardian, Noshak observed with a touch of mockery. Still believing you can protect everyone. How did that work in Kabul, In the hospital ward? Tad's expression remained neutral, but his eyes hardened. Say what you came to say. First, introductions. Manners matter, yes? Noshak turned to Ren with a smile that never reached his eyes. My name is Malik Noshak. I knew your father when you were very small, before he became a janitor, before he became a ghost. Ren looked to Tad, uncertainty clear in her expression. Dad? Tad held her gaze, seeing in her face echoes of her mother, a woman who had also been caught in the crossfire of his former life. It's complicated, kiddo, and not important right now. Oh, but it is important, Noshak insisted. Identity is everything. Your father was once one of the most lethal men in the world. A phantom, they called him. Invisible until the moment he struck. The man who could get in anywhere, eliminate any target, disappear without a trace. Stop, Tad said quietly. Noshak continued as if he hadn't spoken. 16 men of his unit entered the mountains near Kabul. The world was told all 16 died. A convenient lie. Vickers, still held at gunpoint by the door, shifted slightly. This isn't helping anyone, Noshak. What do you want? Justice, Noshak replied simply. Accountability. 17 years ago, this man, he pointed at Tad, led an operation into a civilian area on faulty intelligence. When they discovered their mistake, rather than abort, they continued. The results were, shall we say, messy. Tad's hands clenched into fists on the table. That's not how it happened. No? Then how did it happen, Phantom? Tell your daughter. Tell her about the hospital. About the children. The words struck like physical blows. Tad's carefully maintained control threatened to crack under the weight of memories he had spent years burying. The hospital corridor, dimly lit by emergency generators. The intelligence that had placed a high-value target inside. Intelligence that had proven catastrophically wrong. We were set up, he said finally, each word precise and controlled. Fed intelligence designed to put us in the wrong place at the wrong time. A trap meant to destroy the unit and create an international incident. Noshak's expression hardened. A convenient excuse. It's the truth. We realized the intelligence was compromised the moment we entered the facility. We were attempting to withdraw when the first explosives detonated. Dad? Ren's voice was small, uncertain. What is he talking about? Tad looked at his daughter, seeing the confusion and fear in her eyes, and made a decision. She deserved the truth, or at least part of it. Before I worked maintenance, before you were born, I was in the military, special operations. We were sent on a mission that went very wrong. Mr. Noshak here believes we were responsible for what happened. He's wrong. Noshak laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Such simplicity, such clean lines between right and wrong. Tell her about the aftermath, Phantom. Tell her what happened to those who survived the initial blast. Tad's jaw tightened. We evacuated as many civilians as we could, under fire, with limited resources, in a facility that was collapsing around us. Yet, somehow, you survived, Noshak pressed. You and how many others from your unit? That information remains classified, Vickers interjected, earning himself a sharp jab from the weapon at his head. 4, Tad said quietly. 4 of us made it out. The rest died trying to save civilians. Noshak nodded slowly, as if confirming a long-held theory. 4 phantoms, disappearing into the night while a hospital burned. And now, 17 years later, I find one of them living a quiet life, pushing a mop, raising a daughter. He turned to Ren. Did you know your father was a hero? That's the official story. Medals awarded posthumously, names engraved on walls of honor. Enough games, Tad interrupted, his patience wearing thin. You've found me. What do you want? Noshak leaned forward, all pretense of civility gone. I want the truth. I want the world to know what really happened that night. Who gave the orders? Who planted the explosives? Who decided that a hospital full of civilians was acceptable collateral damage? The accusation hung in the air, loaded with 17 years of cultivated hatred. Tad met it head on, his voice steady. We didn't plant those explosives, Noshak. We were as much victims of that night as anyone. More so because we've had to live with it, knowing we were set up, knowing we couldn't tell the truth without compromising national security. Noshak's eyes narrowed. Convenient again, always hiding behind national security, behind classified operations, behind the wall of silence. What would you know about it? Tad challenged, a rare flash of anger breaking through his controlled facade. You weren't there. You were safely away, pulling strings, feeding bad intelligence up the chain, making sure we walked into that trap. For the first time, Noshak appeared genuinely surprised. You think I was involved in the planning? That I would sacrifice my own people? Your people? Tad's laugh was bitter. You were never loyal to anyone but your handlers, Noshak. Triple agent from the beginning. CIA thought they turned you, but you were SVR all along, using American intelligence to further Russian interests in the region. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Noshak's expression flickered, composure momentarily cracking to reveal something darker beneath. Interesting theory, he said finally, recovering his poise, and conveniently unprovable, since everyone who could confirm or deny it is dead, except the 4 phantoms? 3 now, Tad corrected grimly. Your handiwork, I assume. Whitson, Dela Cruz, Hirsch. Noshak shrugged, neither confirming nor denying. Justice takes many forms. That wasn't justice. That was execution. As your team executed 27 civilians in that hospital, Noshak countered sharply, including my sister and her 2 children. The statement brought a momentary silence to the room. Tad's expression shifted, realization dawning in his eyes. That's what this is really about, he said softly. Not justice, revenge, personal revenge. Noshak's face hardened. My sister was a doctor. She stayed when others fled, believing her skills were needed. Her children were with her because their home had been destroyed the week before. They were innocent. Yes, they were, Tad agreed, his voice gentle despite the tension of the moment. As were all the victims that night. As were the 12 members of my team who died trying to evacuate civilians after the first explosions. For a brief moment, something like uncertainty crossed Noshak's features. It was quickly replaced by the cold mask of control, but Tad had seen it. A crack in the armor of conviction. You're a good liar, Phantom. Always were. I'm not lying, Noshak. Check the classified after-action reports, the real ones, not the sanitized versions released to the public. 12 body cameras, 12 different perspectives of that night. The truth is there, if you're willing to see it. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, if not for the soft sound of approaching sirens in the distance. The younger man by the door tensed, looking to Noshak for direction. Time grows short, Noshak observed, seemingly unperturbed by the approaching authorities. So, we must conclude our business. He reached slowly into his jacket, prompting Tad to tense, ready to launch himself across the table if necessary. But what emerged was not a weapon, but a small tablet device, which Noshak placed on the table and activated with a swipe. The screen displayed a classified document header, followed by text that Tad recognized immediately. The official mission brief for Operation Shadowcast, the code name for the ill-fated hospital mission. "Where did you get this?" Tad asked, genuine surprise breaking through his carefully maintained composure. "I have friends in interesting places," Noshak replied cryptically. "But more importantly, I have the complete set. All the files, all the body camera footage, all the communication logs. Everything your government tried to bury." He swiped again, revealing another document, this one bearing Russian intelligence markings, including these: the original orders straight from Moscow to their asset in the field. Orders to plant explosives in a civilian hospital, trigger them during an American Special Forces operation, and ensure maximum casualties for propaganda purposes. Tad stared at the document, pieces falling into place with devastating clarity. "You weren't the asset." "No," Noshak confirmed. "I was the convenient scapegoat, the triple agent whose loyalty was already in question, the perfect person to blame when the operation went sideways." Another swipe revealed a photograph of a man Tad recognized immediately, Colonel Viktor Yegorov, the Russian military attaché who had been their primary intelligence source for the region. "Yegorov?" Tad breathed, old anger rising at the sight of the man. "He fed us the intelligence about the target in the hospital, and planted the explosives the day before," Noshak added, "then disappeared back to Moscow before they detonated, mission accomplished. Both sides blamed, neither side trusting the other. Regional cooperation set back by years. A masterpiece of manipulation." The sirens were growing louder now, multiple vehicles approaching from different directions. The younger man by the door shifted nervously, looking to Noshak. "Malik, we need to move," he urged in accented English. Noshak held up a hand for patience, his focus entirely on Tad. "For 17 years, I believed you and your team were responsible for the deaths of my family. I hunted the phantoms, eliminating them one by one as I found them. But each time, something felt wrong. Their surprise seemed genuine, their confusion real. Because we were set up," Tad said quietly. "All of us. American and Afghan assets alike." Noshak nodded slowly. "So it seems. But the question remains, what do we do with this truth?" The sirens had stopped, indicating the vehicles had arrived. Through the front window, Tad could see tactical units deploying around the house, taking up positions with practiced efficiency. "We could end it here," Tad suggested, measuring his words carefully. "The truth is out. We both know who was really responsible. Let the authorities handle Yegorov." Noshak laughed, genuinely amused. "You think your government will pursue a Russian colonel for a 17-year-old operation? That they will admit their intelligence was compromised, their special forces manipulated? No, my friend, they will bury this deeper than before." "Then what do you suggest?" "A trade," Noshak said simply. "These files, this evidence for my freedom. I walk away, disappear for good this time. You get the truth, closure for the families of your fallen comrades, and justice for the true perpetrator." Outside, a negotiator's voice came through a bullhorn, the standard calls for surrender and offers of safe passage for hostages. Neither Tad nor Noshak paid it any attention. "And the others?" Tad asked. "The surviving phantoms?" "They live," Noshak promised. "Their ghosts can rest. This ends today one way or another." The choice before Tad was complex, layers of duty and personal responsibility colliding with the practical realities of the situation. He glanced at Ren, seeing in her eyes not fear now, but a kind of determination, a resilience that reminded him painfully of her mother. "Dad," she said quietly, "what's the right thing to do?" The simple question cut through the tactical calculations, the weighing of options and outcomes. In the end, it came down to that, the core question that had guided him through his darkest moments. "We tell the truth," he decided, looking back to Noshak. "All of it. No more convenient lies, no more classified cover-ups. The families deserve to know what really happened that night." Noshak studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, a gesture of unexpected respect. Agreed. But how do we ensure the truth reaches the right ears? A new voice entered the conversation from the doorway behind No Shock. That won't be a problem. Admiral Harlow stood framed in the entrance to the kitchen, his uniform impeccable despite the tactical situation. Behind him, Navy SEAL operators had quietly neutralized No Shock's associate, the younger man now secured and kneeling on the floor. Admiral, Tad acknowledged, not entirely surprised by his former commander's arrival. Good timing. Harlow's gaze moved from Tad to No Shock, then to the tablet still displaying the classified documents. I see you've been comparing notes. Comparing truths, No Shock corrected, turning to face the Admiral without apparent concern for the operators flanking him. Discovering that perhaps we have more in common than differences. Harlow moved further into the room, his authority filling the space despite the unusual circumstances. I received your package this morning, the complete files, including the Russian intelligence, very thorough. No Shock inclined his head slightly. I am nothing if not methodical. So I've noticed, Harlow replied dryly. He turned his attention to Tad. The house is secured. Tactical teams have cleared the perimeter. No additional hostiles found. Tad nodded, relief washing through him, though his expression remained controlled. Ren needs to be moved to a secure location until this is resolved. Already arranged, safe house in Montana, as Agent Vickers suggested. Vickers, now freed from his captive position, moved to stand beside Harlow. A medic had attended to the cut on his forehead, which was now covered with a small butterfly bandage. Transport is standing by, Chief. Wheels up in 30 minutes. Ren looked between the men, confusion evident in her expression. I don't understand. Why do I have to go to Montana? What's happening? Tad turned to his daughter, knowing he owed her more truth than he had given her in the past 12 years. Things are complicated right now, kiddo. Some people from my past have resurfaced, and until we sort everything out, it's safer for you to be away from here. But what about school? What about my science project? The normalcy of the concerns amidst such extraordinary circumstances brought a small smile to Tad's face. The facility has excellent educational resources, and I'll make sure all your science materials are shipped there. Will you be coming with me? She asked, the real fear behind her pragmatic questions finally emerging. Tad hesitated, looking to Harlow for confirmation. The Admiral gave a slight nod, permission granted. Yes, Tad assured her, reaching out to take her hand. I'll be with you the whole time. No more separations. No Shock watched this exchange with an unreadable expression, something almost like wistfulness crossing his features before being quickly suppressed. And what of me, Admiral? He asked, turning back to Harlow. Am I to be disappeared into some black site, my evidence buried along with me? Harlow's response was measured, diplomatic. That would be the easiest solution, but not the right one. The truth about Kabul has been hidden too long. Too many families on all sides have been denied closure, denied justice. He moved to the table, picking up the tablet and examining the displayed documents with a critical eye. These files will be processed through proper channels. Yegorov will be identified as the primary instigator. The families of the victims, both American and Afghan, will be privately briefed on the true circumstances. And publicly, No Shock pressed. A modified version of the truth, Harlow admitted. Some details will remain classified for legitimate security reasons. But the core fact that both sides were manipulated by Russian intelligence will be acknowledged. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was more than either Tad or No Shock had expected. The acknowledgement seemed to satisfy something deep within No Shock, a tension visibly releasing from his shoulders. And my status? Harlow's expression turned pragmatic. Officially, you'll be listed as in custody, cooperating with ongoing investigations. Unofficially, after debriefing, you'll be offered a choice, a new identity and a location of our choosing, or a consulting position with intelligence services. Your skills and knowledge are valuable, Mr. No Shock. It would be wasteful to simply lock you away. The offer clearly surprised No Shock, who regarded Harlow with new speculation. You are not what I expected, Admiral. I could say the same of you, Harlow replied. He turned to Tad. We need to move. Transport window is closing, and there's still the matter of your official status to resolve. Tad stood, helping Ren to her feet. My official status is civilian maintenance personnel. That doesn't change. Harlow's expression softened marginally. We'll discuss it later. For now, let's get your daughter to safety. As they prepared to leave, Noshak called out to Tad. Phantom? Tad turned, one hand protectively on Ren's shoulder. I would have killed you today, Noshak said quietly. If the evidence had confirmed what I believed for 17 years, I would have executed you in front of your daughter without hesitation. I know, Tad acknowledged, and I can't say I would have done differently in your position. A moment of understanding passed between them, two warriors recognizing in each other the same capacity for both mercy and ruthlessness, depending on where the moral lines were drawn. Perhaps in another life, we might have been allies, Noshak suggested. Perhaps, Tad agreed. But in this one, I think we've both seen enough of war. The transition from the tense standoff in the kitchen to the organized efficiency of the military extraction was almost jarring. Within minutes, Tad and Ren were in a secure vehicle, headed for the airfield, where a transport waited to take them to Montana. Noshak had been taken into separate custody, his future to be determined by negotiations and debriefings yet to come. As they drove away from the house that had been their home for 3 years, Ren looked up at her father with new eyes, seeing beyond the maintenance worker to the man beneath. Were you really one of the most lethal men in the world? She asked, curiosity overtaking fear now that the immediate danger had passed. Tad considered the question carefully. I was very good at a very specific job, he answered finally. A job I never wanted you to know about. Because it was dangerous? Because it was complicated. Because the world isn't as simple as we want it to be for our children. Ren absorbed this, her young mind grappling with concepts far beyond what most 12-year-olds would ever need to consider. Is that why you became a janitor? To hide? Partly, Tad admitted. But also because after all the chaos and destruction, there was something appealing about creating order, about making things clean again. Every day I could see the results of my work, simple, tangible, positive. Ren nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. Like my science project, measuring the effects of different cleaning solutions on bacterial growth. Tad smiled, genuinely touched by the connection. Exactly like that. Creating a better world, one clean surface at a time. The humor, slight as it was, broke the remaining tension between them. Ren leaned against her father's side, a gesture of trust that meant more to him than any military commendation he had ever received. What happens now? She asked, practical as always. Tad looked out the window at the naval base passing by, at the hangar where just hours ago he had been nothing more than a maintenance worker with a mop and a hidden past. Admiral Harlow stood by the entrance, watching their vehicle pass, offering a crisp salute that acknowledged years of service and sacrifice. Tad returned the salute reflexively, muscle memory from a life he had thought long behind him. Then he turned back to his daughter, to the future that mattered more than any past. Now we start over, he said simply. Together. As they drove toward the airfield and whatever awaited them in Montana, the sun was setting over Naval Base Coronado, casting long shadows across the parade ground, where the day's drama had begun. In the hangar, a mop stood propped against a wall, its job unfinished but not forgotten, a silent testament to the man who had wielded it with the same precision he had once applied to more lethal tools. Sometimes the most extraordinary heroes are those who choose the ordinary path, who find dignity in the mundane and purpose in the prosaic. The true measure of strength isn't always in the battles we fight, but in the peace we choose. What hidden depths might exist in the quiet people around you? What stories of courage and sacrifice go untold? Share your thoughts and subscribe to explore more tales of unexpected heroes walking among us.